Hey team, so another great topic I looked up here. It says running 100 miles a week. How much sleep do you need? Okay, I think the more mileage that you're putting in, obviously sleep plays a vital role. Okay, the highest mileage I ever got up to was 142 miles a week. I did a 140 mile week once. I did a 127 mile week a few times, several weeks, probably hundreds of weeks over the years, running between 100 to 120 miles a week. And sleep obviously was a very high priority because I, for the most part, throughout my career, was working a full time job. I was in grad school. I was working in the military, and numerous times having to go out to the field doing field problems, which is extremely hard to do when you're training for a marathon or you're training for long distance races. When you're out in the field, it's almost impossible. Okay, I had to do some really crazy things. And also getting permission from my chain of command to go out in the middle of the night or in the early morning before the sun came up to run while we were out in the field. Those are some of the just things that come up where you're going to be sleep deprived at times. And even if you're running high mileage and you're working a full-time job, you have to fit it in. Take naps throughout the day if you can. I think if you're running 100 miles a week, I think a minimum of 8 hours of sleep per night is mandatory. But again, sometimes, and with a lot of people, and I'm sure that you may be one of them, that are working a full-time job, have children, you have other responsibilities, and you're trying to fit in doing 100 miles a week or more, or the equivalent in kilometers. So again, everybody, I'm in America. We always deal with miles, but I do know a lot of you, most of you around the world are in kilometers. Running that type of mileage, it places so much strain and stress on the body, where sleep, all the recovery, all the benefits of the hard work we're doing, whether it's long runs, whether it's repeat 800s on the track, repeat 1600s, repeat miles, you're doing hill repetitions, you're running hard tempo runs on the roads. These types of hard workouts place so much stress and inflammation in the body. Sleep is where all the benefits of your hard work is coming from. So you can be doing all the hard work perfectly and still screw it all up if you're not paying attention to the amount of sleep you're getting. If you're running 100 miles a week or the equivalent in kilometers per week, you need to be aiming to get 8 hours of sleep minimum. And I had times where I was blessed to have the opportunity to train full time. I had that time when I was with the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program at Fort Carson in Colorado Springs. I was with them for almost 2 years, and that was the one time where I did have the opportunity to really focus on my sleep and get between 8 to 10 hours of sleep. When I was running at that level, 100 miles up to 140 miles a week, I was sleeping between 8 to 10 hours a night, and I made sure that I prioritized that because I was placing so much time and so much effort. When you're running up to 20 miles a day or 32 kilometers a day, 7 days a week, running 7 days a week, if you're not doing this, you're shooting yourself in the foot, okay? So yes, you can run 100 miles a week and be working a full-time job. You could be going to school. You could have children and balance this. And many of you already do this. But I promise you, if you have all that discipline to put in that type of work in terms of mileage and putting in, and not including, we're not just talking about running high mileage. You're putting in your speed training. You're putting in your tempo runs. You're doing hill repetitions. You're doing all the hard anaerobic type training on top of the mileage. If you're doing that type of work and not disciplining yourself to get to bed at a decent time, 10 a.m., or 10 p.m. at night, and sleep throughout the night, you're only really doing 50% of the work, if not less. Also, make sure that you pay attention to hydration and your nutrition, making sure, as I talked about in other videos, if you're feeling chronically fatigued, consider getting a blood test done. And when I say that, make sure that you tell the physician or the nurse, the physician assistant, whoever you're working with, that you want to get your blood ferritin levels checked, and make sure that your ferritin levels are above 30 nanograms per milliliter. Okay, the higher another thing when you're running 100 miles a week, and not only just sleep, But when you're running that high of mileage, especially in the heat and humidity in the summer months, you sweat so much more. Okay, and even in cold weather, you're sweating a lot. And you don't really realize it, but you are sweating a lot even in colder weather. But especially in hot and humid conditions, you have to factor in the importance of maintaining an optimal ferritin level. Okay, ferritin plays a critical role in oxygen transport throughout the body in terms of your cells, in terms of your cellular health. So I really want athletes that are watching this video that are running this type of mileage, 100 miles a week or the equivalent in kilometers, to really pay attention to how you're feeling on a daily and weekly basis. If your performances are starting to really become dismal and you're not performing on the roads or on the track up to your level, up to your what you can do, and if you're not able to hit the splits per kilometer or per mile pace in training, and this is happening over several weeks or several months, get your blood test. Get a blood test, find out where your ferritin levels are at. Sleep is where, like I mentioned before, sleep is where all the benefits happen. So if you have that same amount of discipline to get out on a daily basis and put in the heavy work in terms of your mileage, and you're not disciplining yourself to get sleep and realizing how important this is, then you're not going to perform at the type of level you're dreaming about. You're just simply not going to do that. So start really placing as much emphasis as you can on getting between 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Now, if you are working full time and you just cannot sleep, you can't get that amount of sleep, then like I said before, take some naps throughout the day. An hour here, 45 minutes there is better than not getting any sleep at all. And remember, it's just running, okay? So don't overstress, don't overanalyze, don't overthink this. A lot of athletes have problems sleeping at night because, again, they're overtraining. Sometimes you are overtraining, and you really have to pay attention to this when you're running 100 miles a week or more. It's very easy to overtrain and get fatigued. It's better to do 50% of the work and get better results and get better sleep than running 100 miles a week, okay? So don't get caught up so much in high mileage and thinking high mileage is the answer. When I was up to 142 miles a week, I did that as, well, I have to run more mileage to better my PR of 2:19:35 for the marathon. Okay, I PR'd on 85 to 90 miles a week. And when I got up to 120 to 140 miles a week, I thought that was the answer and what I needed to run 2:15 or under. Dr. Joe Vito, one of the best distance running coaches in the world, told me you'll run well below 2 hours and 15 minutes. Now, I never got to that level. Perhaps I had that capability, but higher mileage wasn't the answer. Okay, so I would much rather you running 50 miles a week and getting great sleep and getting the results that you want versus running 100 miles a week, getting piss poor sleep, and getting equal results on the track and on the roads. It's so hard for athletes, especially driven athletes, motivated athletes like you all are, to back off the paces, to back off the mileage. You think that because you're running less mileage, you're somehow less of an athlete. Now, I'm not saying this is you, but I'm saying a lot of athletes put a lot of undue pressure on themselves, thinking, well, and I've done this too, so I certainly understand. But this was earlier in my career. The faster I got, the more competitive I got, the more I was focusing on strategy. The more I was focusing on leverage. Leverage simply means doing more with less. I think about that now. Outside of running, I think about how can I get better results on pursuits that I am aiming for by working less rather than working harder. Okay, we all know how to work hard, but how many of us really know how to work smart? Okay, think about that. As you prepare for your races, look at your training logs and look at I know I can run faster, but what am I doing in training that's causing me to not run up to my capability? Is running 100 miles a week the problem? Okay. What would happen if I ran 50 to 65 miles a week versus running 100 to 120 miles a week, or the equivalent in kilometers per week? Could I get substantially better results by doing that versus running 100 miles a week? Do not, and I say this as I close this video, do not slack in your sleep. Make sure you pay attention to your all the benefits, and your recovery is going to happen as you sleep, and preferably sound sleep. Don't think that you need to run 100 miles a week or more to become a legitimate athlete, okay? Some of the world's top distance runners and middle distance runners are running 50 miles a week and running world-class times, okay? Some of them are a little higher, and there's some that are out there running at this level, 100 miles or more per week, or the equivalent in kilometers. There are some that are running at that, but you don't need to run 100 miles a week to be a legitimate athlete. So remember that, and do not slack on this. Do not, put all of your emphasis on your training, physical training, but also take that discipline that you have and put that also into the things that you're doing outside the other hours of your day. Proper sleep, proper hydration, relaxing, not overanalyzing, not overstressing yourself. Okay, the most relaxed athlete, the best prepared athlete is going to get the results. So I hope this video on running 100 miles a week, how much sleep do you need? I hope this is helpful for all of you that are just kind of thinking of some different strategies as you prepare, and in terms of your sleep and how important this is. Please leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. How have you done better? How much sleep do you usually get? And when you've set your personal records, I'd love to hear how much sleep were you getting per night. And it's not going to shock me if some of you have gotten PRs even on like 3 or 4 hours a night. Again, if you can factor in some recovery and some naps throughout the day, you can still work with this. But it is best if you can aim for 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night, if you're running 100 miles a week. So thanks again for your support. Thanks for watching my videos. Please like and share these. Check out the resources below or on RunDreamAchieve.com, and I'll talk to you guys and gals all in the next video.